Oh, g'day everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Weekend Wrap brought to you by Crowcast, of course. Round 12 versus Sydney, and probably the best performance by the Crows for the season, I would imagine. But don't take my word for it. Tune right in, and we'll get going, shall we? Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to everyone who's joined us on Discord, a cast of thousands on Discord tonight, which is great to see, and people shuffling in on YouTube as well. So it's going to be a bumper episode, and so it should be too, because what a bloody great win it was by the Crows yesterday. And joining me, as always, in various states of sobriety, Brownie, how you going, mate?
Yeah, really good. Thanks, mate. Yeah, pretty happy after that. Getting the Sydney monkey off our back was fantastic, and another away win. So pretty pumped.
Absolutely. And big man, how are you, mate?
Good, thanks, mate. I thought you were introducing Mac then, but I wouldn't call it sobriety. But no, I'm good. It was a great win. It was probably our most. I mean, obviously the opposition didn't turn up, but it was probably our most complete win for the year, alongside the Carlton game. So yeah, pretty thrilled.
Hey, 100%. Dare I even attempt to introduce Macca? How are you, mate?
Flying, mate. Flying.
Flying. Macca's had a big day. Oh, dear. Awesome.
No, but I will still make sense, mate. I will.
Yeah, well, that'll be a first. Maybe it's the alcohol that'll help.
We'll try and see.
No, look, we've been copping a bit of stick, you boys, for a little bit of negativity, but I got to say, there's not a hell of a lot to be negative tonight, is there? About tonight, is there? It was a good win, or better than a good win. It was an absolute demolition and extremely professional performance is how I sort of thought of it, big man. Just we came with a good plan. It was a simple plan, but it was appropriate. We shut down their two key players and we crunched it up and didn't allow them a lot of free exit out of their defensive 50, and we just piled on the pressure and away it went.
Yeah, I think that's the key word, Dean. Pressure. It's probably the best pressure game I think we've had for a long time. And it's funny because Sydney brought the pressure too, if you look at the ratings. And I think being a smaller ground probably lends itself to being more on the pressure side of things when you play at the SCG. But we went to another level. That was
as well.
Yeah, it was very dewy, wasn't it? So that obviously adds to that. But no, we brought the heat right from the start. You could tell. I know they kicked the first goal, but I thought our pressure right from the opening bounce was really good. And we just kept bringing it. And, we just sweated on them all the time, whether it was their best, like guys like Heaney and Warner. And we definitely pissed them off, that's for sure. But it worked. And, our forwards tackled well too, Keezy, Neil Bullen. So, I mean, you can't do that every week because it's just hard to sustain that. But, geez, we brought it. It was great to see.
Yeah. Now, Radicus in YouTube, who's one of our biggest supporters, has dropped a little super chat in there for $2, so thanks, mate. That'll get me a coffee. And he's asked, no sack Nick's garbage tonight. So, Macca?
No, we certainly won't be talking about sacking Nicks tonight. I think that actually there's a bit of sanity has prevailed in the coaching ranks, and I thought they came up with a superb plan to beat Sydney. And I have to say this Big Man summed up the pressure factor very, very well, because at one rating it was up to about 280 or something like that. And we made, Sydney couldn't match that. But there's one factor that I think was really, really evident in this game. It was the total buy-in by the team. It was the most powerful team effort I've seen from the Crows team for many a long day. And that's shown up by, if you look at the overall stats, I mean, this is a side that won by 90 points, 15 goals. And yet the highest number of possessions for one player is 25. We only had 5 players that had 20 or more possessions. And that says a hell of a lot for a team. It just means that you've had total buy-in from the team, because you can't win by 15 goals if you haven't got total buy-in. When your highest, that was Neil Bullen had 25, and there was only 4 others that had more than 20, which means that everybody's played their part and worked really hard to do it. So I think that was. And if you play like that, you win premiers. That's how you win finals at least.
And Brownie, that was a surprisingly good insight from Macca, and we'd better take advantage of it while he's still on his chair. But that was borne out by the even spread of the stats, wasn't it, mate? Like, we didn't have any real standouts, but a really even spread. And who does our bloody best players in there? Dominic Crowe had a real tough time splitting the best players because it was so even.
Yeah, I think that was by far our most even performance, and even some of the guys that didn't get big numbers still contributed pretty well. Like, I think Fogarty only had 7 possessions, but he kicked a couple of goals, and he brought the pressure as well. It was fantastic.
Yeah. So look, and as Wayne Miller came out today, which was made way too much of, and mentioned that the Sydney players, through their communication, sort of unravelled a bit. They didn't really have any answers. And, I guess, big man, we can say that they're down a few players and all the rest of it. But again, you can only beat who's put in front of you. And winning in Sydney at any stage is a good win. Beating a team on their home deck is a good win. But considering the monkey we had on our back with that mob and the disasters that we've faced from them over the last couple of years, it was very good just to lift that one off.
No, definitely. It certainly wasn't the performance of a team that's a steaming pile of shit, as Arab said last week. So it was much better than that. Look, to be honest, I said last week I don't trust us, and then when the selections came out on Thursday night, I was even more worried about it. Plus the whole blood celebration thing before the game, I just thought, here we go. And there's no doubt Sydney aren't playing great footy, and they've got some soldiers out. Goulden tore us a new one last year, and they've got a few others up forward like Papley and McDonald and Amadi even. But one thing I really noticed out there, and Macca was sort of alluding to it, but I thought we just were not going to be intimidated last night. And I reckon in the past we've let guys like Heaney. I remember, I think the 2022 game. Heaney was like pushing over Berry and getting into him and really getting in his face, and it looked like we were intimidated that day. And they've sort of had that over us for a few years now, obviously under Nicks particularly. But we looked like a team that just wasn't going to put up with that last night. In fact, I thought we were probably the aggressors. We were the ones that get in their faces, and it worked. Yeah. It worked big time.
Well, I think, Brownie, what game was it where we Freo, I think, where we mentioned how we didn't turn up in the first quarter and all the rest of it. And then there was a game that we played, it might have been the West Coast game last week. No, I don't think it might have been the Carlton game, where everyone was getting fired up and congratulating each other and getting around each other. And we said at the time that they needed to bring that energy to an away game. And it felt like for the first time in ages, we came over to an opposition's home deck with intent and with a real mindset to put them to the sword and support each other.
Yeah, I thought we all seemed to have buy-in and play with a harder edge yesterday. And there was a lot more aggression towards the opposition, and it wasn't always retaliatory. It was actually being a bit proactive sometimes, just to sort of assert our authority. And you were seeing a fair bit of it from pretty much everyone. And I think it was on the back of that massive front half pressure that we put on. And the guys bought in, and they pretty much kept it up. They might have slipped a little bit for 10 minutes in the third quarter, which you can't dominate for 80 minutes, but they kept it up pretty much for the whole game.
Now, just a reminder to those, we've got 35 in the audience tonight in Discord, which is fantastic. So a reminder that we are live and interactive. So if you do want to come in and have your say like Arab did last week, I'm not sure whether he was drunk, but if you want to come on and have a chat and give us your 2 cents worth, we'd much appreciate it. Of course, you can chat away. All the chat is streamed on the broadcast on YouTube as well as the YouTube chat. So if you're watching on YouTube and you feel like saying something, drop it in chat and we'll definitely see it. Everyone sees both platforms. So, all right. Now, look, we give Matthew Nix and the coaching staff a lot of shit. And we certainly gave them a bit of stick for picking Brodie Smith on Thursday night. There was a fair bit of banter in the Crowcast chat channel on Discord. And, you know, leaving aside the Brodie Smith selection for a moment, I think we owe it to the coaching staff to give them just as much plaudits when they get it right. And I felt like not only were the players cohesive, but I felt like the plan was extremely evident. And it's one thing to have a plan, but to have everyone bought in and playing their role is a coaching achievement. And they've obviously prepared very well for this one. And the execution was fantastic. So we've got to take our lids off, Macca, to the coaching staff, don't we?
Well, I was actually going to raise this very point. You've actually just beat me to it there, Fiend. That to me, it seemed like we learnt something out of the Collingwood game. One of the things with Collingwood that they have a structure which they stick to, and it's very, very hard once you their ball's in their forward line to get it out of there because of the way they set up. And I thought we just sort of learned a little bit from that because when they were trying to kick off from a point, or if they were kicking in from, say, the back pocket, half back flank, when they were looking down the ground, they had nobody to kick to. The way we had it all totally covered, it was just crushing them in the sense that, mate, that would have been so frustrating to the bloke with the ball to know what to do. Then he's all the time having to kick to a risky situation. So I thought that, and I know this is what I'm talking about, total buy-in. The players bought into it and they did what they had to do. In that when they came out after half-time, they're not totally switched on. They haven't got retuned, if you like. And it just shows how the mental part of football comes into it. In that first, say, 7 or 8 minutes, it took us to regenerate what we were doing and what we were supposed to be doing. And what the coaching staff wanted them to do was a very good plan, and it showed how well it worked in the sense that they got an opening goal in the very first minute or two, and then they've gone a whole half without scoring at all, a goal, and then they've come out and where our minds aren't totally reset, and then they've got 4 quick ones. Once we've reset, they never got a game again for that, nearly a whole half a game again. So, yeah, I think if we play that style of football every week, we are definitely a finals contender. There's no doubt about that. And if we continue to do that, we could go further because when you look back at the game against Collingwood, we burnt opportunities to kick goals. And it's not beyond the possibility that we could have beaten Collingwood if we'd done the right thing in kicking goals. So
can you?
I think they've got the structure pretty good.
Can you just say a whole half a footy again for me, please?
a whole half a footy.
How many Reds in are you, mate? How many Reds in are you? Just out of curiosity.
No, it's not that. It's the liqueurs, mate. Afterwards.
Oh, liqueurs! Oh my god. Fantastic. Oh, look. All right. Yeah, so look, credit where it's due. And There's one thing, Brandy, that I noticed that was probably backs up what you're saying about learning from the Collingwood game, Mac, is that, and we'll have a look at the team stats in a second, but our contested ball, whilst our pressure was fantastic, in those conditions, which weren't dissimilar to, they weren't as bad as the Collingwood game, but they were still very slippery and all the rest of it, we were quite prepared to give away first possession and corral them and make that next possession difficult for them, which is why we scored fucking 12 goals from front half turnovers, because once they might have got the first touch out of contest, but often it was coming right back over their head.
Yeah, without doubt. And I think hit-outs were pretty even across the board throughout the game. And you're right. Yeah, they were up on the contested possession, but I think it appeared that was the strategy. It was just massive pressure so that they didn't have that second link to move the ball. And our scores from turnovers, I think it was about, I don't know, it was about 8 scores from turnovers.
No, 14 goals from turnovers, and 12 of those were from front half turnovers. It was a crazy stat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Mac, we've been saying for a while that's how Collingwood always beat us, isn't it? They don't overcommit. They don't overcommit to the contest. They'll certainly apply pressure at the contest and supply a number, but they don't all swarm in like little seagulls. They're very much about protecting that next possession, aren't they?
They are, and that's why they're so good. I mean, but if you look at the Collingwood age players, and they don't have a great deal of speed, but they do have a lot of nous. And it's, as you said, it's just protecting that next where the ball's going to go to the next time. They often concede it because they know that you won't be able to use it for the next time.
And big man, I reckon that's a bit of a change in the way AFL is being played this year, because there's a few teams that aren't huge on contested numbers, and relying very heavily on half-back rebound and forcing turnovers and that. Geelong's another one. Do you reckon we're seeing a bit of a change in the way AFL's being played at the moment?
Essentially, and I think that's it'll be interesting to see, if you look back in the last few years and the next few years before us, like how important is that initial clearance, and versus how much that intercept possession and then the rebound of halfback is more important. Which one's more important? We actually got beaten in the centre, and particularly around stoppage last night, but it didn't seem to matter at all because we kept winning the ball back off their turnover and then surged from there. And then when we did get it up forward, we either scored or we locked it in and kept getting repeat turnovers. So, look, ideally we'd have the best midfield in the comp. We don't. So you have to adjust around that. And, unfortunately, we don't have the best halfbacks either, but what we do have is some very good intercept players. And I think our skill level was pretty good last night in trying conditions. And then, obviously, that heat we brought up forward was so important. So, it's curious. I mean, Richmond, in some ways, were that, weren't they, in their flag years? They weren't a great clearance team by any means. And they were the best contested ball team, but what they did do was surge from halfback, apply extreme pressure, and they were pretty good kicks, but they loved to use by hand. And obviously, once they got inside 50, you weren't getting it. They weren't really letting it out. So it's different methods, in some ways, we're probably the inverse of a team like Port Adelaide, I guess, in that sense. But every game's different.
We're a higher rating. We're slightly higher rating than Port and clearances, but only just. Brisbane are highest rated. They their clearance numbers average 40.4, Bulldogs 39.9. But you can see Geelong are down a bit further. They're just above us. Collingwood are middle of the road, middle of the pack. Hawthorn are a couple of notches below Collingwood. And what surprises me, given Matt Rao, Noah Anderson, and the rest of them at Gold Coast, they're like about 12th for clearances.
Is this overall or is this differential?
No, this is overall average clearances.
Yeah, because sometimes I think it's also differentials probably like I prefer to look at it that because and then it might be similar. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the stats, but because some games obviously some teams play more in the wet or the way it's worked out, they play in more congested games, and their clearance numbers are higher because of that. A team like say that's going to play at Marvel Stadium, for instance, most home games like a St Kilda or something, probably not going to be as many clearances as a team that plays in the wet. Like we've had a few wet games lately, so I'm just curious if the differential would show something different.
I value your esteemed knowledge, but in this case, I can't back you up. Hawthorn are a 0.8 positive differential. Brisbane are a 4.5, so they do rely heavily on clearance work, Brisbane.
Yeah.
But Geelong are minus 1.8, Collingwood are minus 1.1, so basically parity. Gold Coast minus 1.9, and we're minus 2.7.
Yeah.
So and GWS minus 3.1. So I think it's an interesting change in the way some teams are playing, and I think it's a horses for courses. Like you look at a team like Brisbane, where their strength is obviously in their midfield. They're obviously going to use that to their advantage. But a team like Collingwood that have such a strong half-back line, and yes, they've got Nick Dacos and Pendlebury and that, but you wouldn't call them the most powerful midfield going around, but around the ground they're fantastic. So their strength is in their spread and their link-up in it, Brownie. And I think I had a look at some stats today because it occurred to me, and it's quite a marked change for some teams how they're playing, and I don't mind it from us because we're probably middle of the road in terms of our midfield at the moment, Brownie.
Yeah, and I think what you said about we might not have the best halfbacks, but we've got some bloody good key intercept defenders. I mean, Keane and Worrell again yesterday were fantastic. I think Keane had over 10 marks, I think. And Andy's actually starting to use it better as well. But I think that's where we got our real rebound from yesterday. And I've got to say one thing about Brodie Smith being in the side yesterday and having led out, I think we possibly benefited from better ball use, not as many balls kicked sort of high to a contested sort of situation. Brodie was actually finding a few targets. It was quite good.
Yeah, and we'll get into it a little bit more. I don't necessarily disagree with you for that particular game. When you look at Brisbane next week, and let's not get into it right now, but I think it might be a horses for courses thing. You look at Brisbane's forward line; they've got some excellent small forwards, and I wonder whether Smithers has got a match up next week. But anyway, we'll talk about that down the track. Let's go through the formalities, shall we? Before we get ahead of ourselves in all our excitement, and as I mentioned, don't forget, you guys in the Discord audience, if you want to have your 2 bobs worth, then feel free. We've got plenty of room for your comments. So 90 points in the end, 21-5, good kicking, 131 to 511-41. Remarkably good kicking under the circumstances, particularly because our tools didn't feature heavily on the scoreboard, so a lot of that was ground ball work from Keys and Rash and those blokes. The head-to-head AFL stats, 348 to 322 disposals. Both teams favoured kicking, obviously, in the slippery conditions, although I think that was Sydney's downfall a little bit, Macca. What do you think? I think their desire to kick the ball out of defence was to their disadvantage, considering we were set up so high, and they probably could have done with running the ball a little bit more, you reckon?
Yeah, that's 100% right, because the way we were set up, it was going to always be to a contest, and quite often we were actually outnumbered them at the contest. So I think they're on a bit of a hiding to nothing the way the dedication we were showing compared to theirs, but that would have been a much better chance and more likely perhaps to get over the pack if they could do that, which they really struggled to do.
Reminded me of us, like watching us play Geelong in reverse.
A little bit like that, but There's one point that hadn't been mentioned so far, that we had 14 individual goal kickers, which that's astounding. 14 individual goal kickers. So, we weren't. That's just coming back to the fact we weren't relying on any one particular player to get out. But no, I just think that we had. You're coming back to the centre of the ground with clearances. There are clearances and there are clearances in the sense that if you get the clearance where you're running straight at your forward line, they are harsh clearances for the defending side. But if you can actually put them under pressure, so they're hooking around a corner or kicking towards centre wing or something like that, the clearances. So as I said, sometimes the numbers of clearances don't quite tell the true story, and
that's true.
It's the really.
Sorry, mate. Finish off.
I was just going to say the really damaging ones are when somebody shoots a handball to somebody just running straight at the goal. That really just that puts everybody under fire. So and which we did a few of those as well.
Yeah, well, big man, I don't know whether you saw Dean Cox's press conference, but he made mention of the fact that whilst they won that clearance stat, our clearances and our contested work was more effective. And their clearances tended to be softer wins.
Sorry, Mackie, you go.
No, that was actually the very point I was making. So you can take it away there, mate.
No, I was just going to agree with Fiend, or we'll agree with Coxie, I guess. I think pound for pound, their midfield matches up, even without Gordon, still matches up pretty well. Grundy actually had a pretty good night in the ruck, although his best work was probably more with his intercept marking. But like he and Warner were off, and our boys didn't have huge numbers in there. But what they did do is pressure their midfielders really well. Like, I'll be honest, I think Saligo got away with a bit on Warner at times from the umps, but fair's fair. We've had our players scragged as well in the past. And Heaney, he looked like he was just going to belt on at points in the game. He was really upset. So, and it worked. A lot of those guys. Warner is someone that sort of front of stoppage, heading towards inside 50 clearance work that you talked about, Macca. That's the one you don't want Chad Warner to get because he's so quick. Yeah. But he just wasn't able to get that. He was constantly hooking around the body or kicking off the ground or whatever, and he went at 21 disposal efficiency or something by foot. So, they weren't damaging our side of stoppage. And, while we didn't have a great game in terms of our clearance work, the important thing is that we managed to get inside 50, and then from there it was the repeat inside 50s that made such a difference.
I honestly think it was intentional. Big man. I don't think it was 13 each in centre clearances, 29 to 42 stoppage clearances. Now, to me, I felt like we did what Collingwood do, and that was corral the contest more.
Yeah.
I agree.
And I think we had 25 more inside 50. We had 70 for the game.
Yeah,
so
70 to 45 was ridiculous.
That's unbelievable. That is huge. And we've had games where we've actually conceded inside 50s numbers this year.
Yeah.
So obviously a lot of that goes down to repeat entries, but also just the forwards themselves doing relentless work. And like I said, also as I said, our midfield didn't have a huge game. I think we've seen all our boys play better. But if anything, I think just from thinking back on the game, I think some of the best clearances were on our side with guys like Berry and Peatling. Berry had some beautiful centre clearances.
Yeah,
where he was able to accelerate for stoppage. Like we haven't had a lot of those in the last few weeks. So to get that from him was fantastic.
People are saying the audio's gone. I'm not sure why that would be, because nothing's changed at this end. Interesting. Just if someone is watching on YouTube, is it the YouTube audio that's gone or the Discord audio that's gone? It's strange that we're all of a sudden... It's YouTube that's the audio's gone. Well, that's
I can hear you now. I heard nothing for ages.
Oh, really?
Oh, it's back. That must have just been a little bit of latency then. That was... a bit strange. But it looks like we're all back on deck, so we'll keep going. So let's just run through the rest of these real quick. Efficiency inside 50, both teams were down. Ours was 43%, theirs 45%. But we just weighted numbers, as you said. Big man 70 to 45 inside 50s. Marks inside 50, it wasn't that kind of night, only 5 apiece. Clearances, as I said, 13 apiece across centre, 29 to 42 around stoppage. Hit outs 45 to 40. And NT put a good comment on the chat there. Grundy struggled more with Thilthorpe when Thilthorpe went into the ruck, I thought, than with O'Brien, to be honest. Contested posies 148 to 159 their way, uncontested 188 to 152. That's all the Mark Keen's possessions behind the ball. Marks 83 to 61 again. That was us behind the ball. Turnovers 69 to 80, and tackles 84 to 83. So, I felt like the biggest stats were not the ones that you get from AFL. That the scores from turnover, I think it was 14 goals, 8 from turnover. And I think, as I mentioned, 12 of those goals were from not forward 50, but front half, so forward of centre turnovers. So our ability to just strangle them and get repeat entries was really the telling factor in the end.
Yeah. One thing I was going to say there, Feen, was the interesting fact was that the 3 boys that we've added to the team, the new boys that came in this year, all good gets. They all performed under the pressure of this particular game and were great contributors. So, last year it would have been a Murphy playing on that half forward flank, so not a Neil Bullen who picks up the 25 possession. So, we're just a lot more even team, and and I think as we said already with the coaches, I think twiddling with the game plan a little bit just to make it much tighter. Yeah, it was really good. It just all worked.
I think without getting too much off the beaten track, Brownie, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, because we've been banging on about play the kids. And have we missed the mark? Have we actually not realised that the team, the club decided, or the list management committee decided 12 to 18 months or 2 years ago that those kids that we've drafted, and I'm talking about your Schoenbergs and those types, your Dowling and those sort of types, whether they were never going to be more than depth players, which is why we went heavy in the trade. Because if you have a look at the players that are performing now, they're Jordan Dawson, Isaac Rankin, Peatling, Neil Bullen, like all these blokes. Did we miss the point that maybe the club just made that decision from a list management point of view?
Oh, yeah, possibly. I think you're right. We've got our results from our trading over the last 2 or 3 years have been exceptional, especially the 3 that we brought into the club this year, like Macca said. And that was definitely the most even contribution from those 3 yesterday. But you'd still like to think when you're drafting youngsters that you try and get some games into them. So I don't know whether they might have made a call on Schomburg and some of those guys at the beginning of this year that they're really only going to be backups in an emergency situation. But some of the young guys that look like they've got potential, you'd like to think that they'd be flooding some of them. So it'd be interesting to have a one-on-one with Matthew Nix and see what the mindset is. But
yeah, unfortunately, I don't have enough money to buy that interview. Look, I think you could probably make a case for a couple of them. Charlie Edwards. We can, whether you like Brodie Smith's game or not, I still think there's a case that Charlie Edwards deserved a spot a few weeks back and may well have had just as an effective game as Brodie did last night. So, I mean, I guess the jury's out on that. But I just wondered whether, with Schoenberg getting his Achilles and Billy Dowling being an unfashionable type and seemingly a bit out of favour, they've given Nankervis a run, dropped him back now. Zach Taylor's now dropped out of the side. I don't know. I'm not saying that is the case, but I just wonder whether what we're seeing is the result of a decision that maybe was made 18 months ago, that maybe they just didn't rate those players or didn't think that those players were going to get us where we needed to go.
Well, I think you're partly right, though, Pete, in the sense that I think what they've done is you look at the number of doubtful spots we would have had going back 2 years ago, and then we weren't looking at 2 or 3, or we're probably looking maybe 6 or 8 or something like that. So you're needing a lot of people to come through, and history tells you they don't all come through. So I would think that they've realised that we've got these young lads. Some of them are going to be good, but you can't really tell who will come through in a major fashion. And they've got these 3 players coming in, which that reduces the number of players they need to come through, which really means that they've got to play rather astounding football to get in, and puts a lot more pressure on them rather than getting them a game easily because you're short of numbers. So it may well be, if not the main factor, partly a factor.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? But I guess, the thing that strikes me, and we'll keep going through the stuff later on and have a look at the ladder, but when you look at the ladder, I think there's only 6 teams that can win it. And Brownie, I think we find ourselves in as one of those teams.
That wouldn't have come out of your mouth a couple of weeks ago, would it?
No, it wouldn't have. It wouldn't have. No, 100%
No.
It wouldn't have.
Yeah, but you're right. I think, I reckon there's probably only 4 or 5 teams that can win it. But I think GWS is probably the one that the jury's out. I think they've got a lot of upside still. But Geelong, Collingwood, and Brisbane, obviously, and GWS and Bulldogs and us.
What about Gold Coast?
Oh, I'm still not convinced. I think, Freo beating them at home, that sends a few warning signals. I think that maybe they're not quite the finished product yet, and how they're going to stack up in finals football. I think finals football is going to be that high pressure kind of game. I'm hoping that we've got the kind of game that will actually be okay in a finals environment. I'm not convinced about Gold Coast. And Western Bulldogs, I think they're a bit schizo. I think their best is fantastic and their worst is horrible.
Yeah, they can get off the chain, but they can also stink it up. All right, just a couple of players of note. I felt, to my eye, it was probably Alex Neil-Bullen's best game in Crows colours so far in terms of output. 25 disposals, 4 tackles, kicked a goal, 5 inside 50, 6 score involvements, 352 metres gained. He seemed to me, big man, to have a bit of a job of working back. He was probably playing the highest of our forwards, and you often found him across half-back.
Yeah, and definitely noticed that. And he was actually the outlet place at times at half-back, which, is something I love to see more of, because not only does he have a great work rate, so he has the ability to find space and be able to, help us get it out of defence, but his decision-making by hand and foot's really good too. So I agree, it's probably his most complete performance for us. He's probably been on the lower side of things, I reckon, the last month after a really solid start.
Under a little bit of pressure, yeah, I'd agree. Yeah,
I think Cumming was probably the one who was in worse form than Neil Bullen, but Nibbler was really good, and he still gets caught with the ball a bit too much. As I said, I wish he had a bit more speed and power, but you sort of take the bad with the good, because there is a lot of good, and I don't expect that sort of performance. 25 touches and a goal from every week, but that was definitely more in line with what I think we were hoping for. And I think that the pressure nature of the game really suited him because he can tackle for sure.
Mm.
And then once he gets the balls in his hands, usually good things happen.
Macca's a bit like that when he gets his balls in his hands. The other bloke I thought probably redeemed himself from the 9-goal disaster last year was Mark Keane, and obviously he benefited from the game plan, but you still got to do it. And his ability to anticipate Macca and come off his man when he needed to and put himself in the right positions was excellent. 23 touches, 10 marks, 3 inside 50s, 15 intercept possessions, and 514 metres gained. He was key to the way that we were able to shut Sydney down on transition.
Yeah, I thought it was quite amazing actually that he read the play so well that he would drop back and then the player could come up and sort of cover as well. So this is obviously part of the plan, and he just read the ball beautifully, and it really was a toss up, I think, between him and Neil Bullen or Keys. That you can argue a case for all of them to be the best, but he's a guy that he only played 5 games in the 2 years he was with Collingwood, so he's not really played a lot of games yet. So he's only going to get better. So when you look at it, it really was a top effort, and his ability to actually drop back at the right time was outstanding, really. And he was like a rock, absolute rock.
Agreed.
Great game.
Agreed. Josh Worrell also across that halfback line was also very good, and like you said, Mac Keys played excellently. Really worked hard to shut down Blakey. Didn't shut him down, but just made him accountable. Kept him deep, and we only saw Blakey once, I think, go for a bit of a run, and even that was a bit forced. I thought Berry did an excellent job keeping Heaney quiet. Saligo probably did most of the work on Warner. They tried to get Rowbottom, I think, big man, was it, am I right in saying he mostly went with Dawson and a little bit with Rankin? So he wasn't really an offensive weapon for them?
No. And that's, I think we went to the game expecting that with Rowbottom. Because he's, Jordan would be too short. Not that Rowbottom's a huge guy, but he's definitely taller than James Jordan, who went to Rankin more so. Jordan didn't have a huge game, but I thought he did his part. He wasn't embarrassed or anything like that. And that's sort of been a thing since he's moved to the club. They've really targeted Geordie, and he hasn't had his best games against Sydney, but I was pretty happy what he did last night.
Oh, he did what he had to do, I think, and it was good that it wasn't all left to blokes like Dawson and Rankin to light the fire. It was the lesser lights. So I was really pleased with Sam Berry's game. Isaac Cummings stood up when he needed to. Rash played really well and continued his 1 CBA for 1 clearance. What are they playing more there? Like, he just every time he goes in there, he just gets a bloody clearance. It's ridiculous.
We've been talking about it for the last couple of years, Pete. I mean, we've been suggesting he gets more centre attendances because he's got a very high percentage of getting the ball when he goes there.
It's just he just hunts it, doesn't he? At that centre bounce, he just seems to be able to read the tap and the drop very well. And that bloody 3-ball he played to Keys, that was a thing of beauty. Oh, that was fantastic,
unbelievable.
It's a legend. It's a legendary. It's a legendary happening. It's got to be preserved. It was just outstanding. I've never seen anything like it. The guy played soccer, and he was actually, I think he was actually a national under 16 or a national under 18. No, couldn't be under 18. National under 16, and he chose to go down the AFL path. But by God, I've never seen any player ever do anything like that. That was just phenomenal.
I was so glad that Benny Keys finished that off because I thought, what a great play. And Benny Keys is on the end of it. I was like, oh, shit. But he
and he almost ran
managed to do
too
it.
far as well.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I
right.
thought he was going to get done for running more than 15, but he must have been right on the edge, I reckon.
Yeah, no, it was a fantastic piece of play, and as Rabbit said in the chat, it was onside too. The flag stayed down. It was fully legit.
Oh, that was phenomenal.
Fiend, another guy I wouldn't mind just quickly mentioning was and look, we've given this guy a bit of a serve at times this year, but I thought we saw the most signs of the old Miller in terms of his ability to weave and break tackles and just an air of confidence about him that I don't think we had seen as much this year until that game. So I thought it was pleasing, because he's copped it for that 3-year extension, but I thought he had a really solid game against Sydney.
Yeah, he had his dancing shoes on, didn't he? And it was the Miller of old getting through traffic. And the good thing about when he does it is that it draws opponents, and that frees up our players for outlets. The longer you hang on to the ball and keep free, you draw more opposition players to you, and that's the value of what he does. So yeah, it was good to see that, and quite surprising because he's been very, very conservative, hasn't he, Brownie, the way he's played prior to that, but it did seem to be a little bit of the old Miller.
Yeah, seemed to have a bit more awareness and a bit more time. He seemed to not panic and he was dancing around a few players. That was definitely really encouraging. If he can bring what he brought 2 years ago that we've been talking about, he's going to be really handy because we need that more creative halfback flanker.
Is there anyone else that we need to apologise to?
I want to also mention the one player you haven't mentioned. I thought it was the best game I've seen him in Crows colours was James Peatling. I thought his attack on the ball, getting his head over the ball, he was just courageous and he just didn't stop, and his second and third efforts were amazing.
He's a beauty.
I thought that's the best I've seen.
I mean, he's Macca's love child, but I tell you what, I'm not far behind. He's an absolute ripper, James Peatling, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, he is my love child. I used to watch him play GWS, and when they were talking about going to another club, I thought, please pick us, because this guy's just growing. I mean, he was only just starting to develop at GWS. He's just a late bloomer, and he is so courageous. He risked life and limb, and yeah, I thought and the thing about him too, he gets knocked to the ground, he gets up quick. I mean, he's 100% goer. No, he's really good.
I think too, big man. Another thing about that is because he's quite a. He can be a little bit rough around the edges, Peatling, with his disposal and all the rest of it. We got Berry, who's improved his disposal, but still, you wouldn't say he's the neatest disposer of the ball. We got Saligo will often kick hurriedly and isn't neat out of clearance as well. It almost seems like we've moved away from needing to have that perfect first disposal out of contest, which you're rarely going to get anyway, and more move towards getting the ball forward and ensuring that the next player down the line is playing in front or in position. Do you reckon?
To an extent, I still think there's a time and place where, as much as you want to win that, say, the centre clearance, for instance, everyone wants to win the centre clearance, but sometimes, getting a 20-metre hat kick straight up the guts usually gets intercepted, other team rebounds, and suddenly it's an air forward 50. So you got to be careful sometimes. I think it's still important to, if you don't get it into the front of the stoppage, at least, dish the hands out, get the guy coming off halfback or the sweep or whatever to receive and then penetrate that way. But sometimes the game doesn't allow for that, and particularly at a ground like the SCG, which is smaller, and in the conditions which are drier than we usually play in. Sometimes it's just better to get it up forward and just get it on the boot. And he's one of the great experts of that, isn't he? He's not only got a natural, I guess, gift to know where to be at stoppage, but as you guys said, he's just so combative. And
he's relentless. He just doesn't give up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And he's not, as I said a few podcasts ago, like he's not as good as Sloaney. He's certainly not as good at Mark as Sloaney, but he's got that sort of similar dogged determination, and he's always at the bottom of packs. He's getting thrown around. He's not the biggest guy. But he makes up for it with effort, and there's just enough class there that he's not sort of a player that I think we're going to get annoyed by or frustrated by his ball use. I think he's shown that he's actually got enough there with his skill set to sort of offset, the rough edges. So I think he's also he's still equal most goal assists in our team for the year, and in the top 3 or 4 in the AFL, I think, as well, which is very, very good. So
he's a stat I didn't realise.
Yeah, so look, he's just he's actually impressed me more than I even expected, because I think we all had high hopes for him. But apart from those first 2 games, he's been really good, and I think I just love watching him play for us. I think he's become one of my favourites pretty quick, and I reckon that's the case for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, the thing is, whilst all those blokes that we just talked about can be a bit untidy out of stoppage, they're all decent enough field kicks. Like, you don't see Pete Lang spray him in transition. You don't really see Saligo or Dawson spray him on transition. So in open play, they're fine. And I think at times Adelaide Crows teams in the past could be accused of trying to be a little bit too perfect, Brownie, like trying to always hit the perfect pass or make the perfect handball or, do the perfect play. And I think these blokes they just roll their sleeves up and get it forward. And I think, like Big Man said, there's probably a time and a place for either.
And I think with our forward setup, it's probably, if you're going to be a bit untidy, as long as they're kicking it inside 50, we've got 3 big guys that are going to bring it to ground, and we've got 3 exceptional small forwards, or 3 or 4 exceptional small forwards as well. So I think it works pretty well. I mean, everyone, like Big Man said, everyone wants that beautiful transition through the, running towards 50 and hitting pecks on the tit. And that happened a couple of times. I think Fogarty got hit once by Rochelle, which was unbelievable when he stepped inside and just put it right in front of him. But that's not going to happen often. And I think, with the forward setup we got, just getting it forward is the most important thing.
I don't know whether we can say tit.
I just did.
just breast.
Did, yeah.
Breast.
I didn't say which one. I didn't say left or right.
No, it's true. Not either snap or crackle. Here's an interesting stat, Big Man, going back to the discussion we are having before about corralling the contest. We are number 1 for post-clearance contested possessions in the competition by a fair way.
Yeah.
87.3 on average. Gold Coast second, 83.6. And it goes down a little bit to Hawthorn and Geelong. But, so interesting. There was one other person I want to talk about too. Now we had Riley Thilthorpe before the game. There was a couple of rumours going around that he had a bit of a back issue, and we saw him get subbed out for Sid Draper with a quarter and a bit to go. No injury reports that I've heard of. Have any of you blokes heard anything about that?
Heard nothing, but I think that's more precautionary than anything, I would say, Fang.
He certainly didn't play like it.
No, I thought early he did, but then he kind of loosened up. I felt the first couple of times he went for a ground ball, he looked like it was a bit of an old man. And I thought, there's that bloody back that was in the room. But after that, he seemed to free up and seemed to be all right.
Yeah, well, look, he's moving pretty well, wasn't he? Right up the time he came off. So, but to me, you had to give the lad on the bench a run. So, and he is so important to us, Thilthorpe. So, if there was any even suspicion of anything, he was logical to take him off. And when we're winning by so much, so I think that was all there was to that.
Yeah, he's a talent though. Like some of those kicks. No, we talk about his marking, but some of those kicks.
That little kick into the corridor.
Yeah. He bites them off. They don't always come off, but when they do, Jesus, like his skills, you forget he's actually as tall as he is because he doesn't move or kick or anything. His football doesn't scream ruckman size player. He's such a smooth mover. I'll flip it on the. I will flip this around though because we've been. It's a bit of a circle jerk tonight. So
hang on,
what
one
about,
more before we clean up, before we tidy up and get the wet wipes out. Daniel Curtin.
Yeah, definitely.
Probably his best game, I think, for us. And
easily.
What he does, if he can, like we were talking last week about maybe wings not his spot and blah 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 blah. But what he does give us is another marking outlet on that side of the ground, and he was taking balls effortlessly last night in slippery conditions.
This kid's got class, man. I mean, you're quite right. He took some overhead marks and made them just look very easily, but just snatching out there. I'll have that one. And also when he passes the ball, he looks effortlessly. He just does it like he's doing an easy little kick at it, and it goes boom straight onto their chest. He's got. I was starting to wonder early in the piece and of his career whether he was as good as he was rumoured to be. I think now we're starting to see he is going to be what they said he was going to be, because, I mean, his game on the weekend, admittedly, he's playing in a side that's doing well, but he's now putting himself more into the play, more into the game, and he's a good person to have it in his hands because he's got such a beautiful left leg, it's an effortless kick. The kids...
Sorry,
go ahead, Big Bang.
No, I was just going to say, just following from that, like, I think one of the things I've really noticed lately in the last 3 or 4 weeks is he's backing himself aerially a lot more. And he'll get even better than that, because I don't think he realizes how good he is. And he's got so many tricks and so much to add. And look, he's not the final product as it is, like, and that's obvious anyway. But his aerial work can still improve, and that will hopefully come with time. And Riley still thought we were worried about his marking at times in his first couple of years. He used to run under the ball and concede to the opposition a lot, and we don't see that nearly as much now. So this just takes time. But you're right, he provides such a great outlet player on that wing at the moment, because he's just going to be so much taller than most of the wingmen he's up against, and he's plunking them.
He's such a bloody unicorn. Like, that's the thing. he's a bit like Mark Blitzarves for Geelong. Like, Mark Blitzarves in his time, to me, I found amazing for someone to be that athletic. With his skill set at such a height, and Geelong could plug so many gaps with him. They could play him ruck, they could play him on ball, they could play him down back, play him up forward. Like, he was a real jack of all trades, and I think we've got the modern day version of that with regards to Curtin. And as you rightly point out, I think he's probably still growing into his body and understanding what he can do, and we're probably also understanding what he can do, and again, you got to give your hats off to the list management committee that they probably didn't know what. I mean, we started him off playing full back in the SANFL. We didn't have a bloody clue what to do with the kid. But they obviously thought that the qualities that he exhibited at such a young age were enough just to take the punt. And again, kudos to Reid and co. To make that call and to make the trade that they needed to get that done, because if we can hang on to him for at least up until his free agency, he could be anything, Brownie, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And I think hats off also to the coaching staff this year for sticking with him. Like, there might have been a couple of games that they could have said, we'll push him back for a bit of experience and to get some bigger numbers, but they stuck with him and just let him grow a little bit every week. And he's probably not going to be one of those guys that gets 25 possessions. If he gets 16, but most of them are quality, that's really what we want. And like Big Man said, his potential, like, he took 7 marks on the weekend, but his potential for that over the next 3 or 4 years to grow, and he could be another Thilthorpe, I mean, similar sort of height. And he's got that Jordan Dawson look about him, the way he launches it.
Imagine having two Riley Thilthorpes. Freaking hell.
Well, he's certainly got a long way to go.
Oh, 100%. And as Tivor rightly points out in the chat, his brother's come up in the draft this year, and he's playing good too, apparently.
he's kicking bags. So he was a full back, Cody, and now he's a goal kicking machine up forward. So they're interesting. Like, units, the curtains. You know, we talk about how we didn't know what to do with him, but his junior career was sort of like that as well. Like he was actually he had a growth spurt late-ish in his junior career, so he was actually more of a midfielder. And then you know, like when he won the best on ground for the under 17 Future Stars game, you know, he kicked a bag of 3 or 4 that day playing as a full forward. Then he was playing mostly midfield for Western Australia in his draft year. Then he played full back on Jed Walter as well in one of the games, and then he was playing as a sort of intercept defender for the for Claremont Seniors. So he's sort of that jack of all trades player, but that sort of undersells what his actual capabilities are and will be going forward. It's exciting to see, and I actually think we could use him more. You know, he does a lot of rewarded running. I think it was actually
15-something Ks and highest defensive runner for the game or something.
Yeah, and you can see that. And there's sometimes I watch him, you know, live and also even on Saturday night. You know, you're watching me like, you know, use Curtin, he's out. And I like to see our boys trust him a bit more because I think every time we kick it to him, he's clunking them. So, I'd love to see him get even more involved. But it just feels like a breakout game is going to happen at some point because he's getting better each game. He's not getting worse.
Yeah, got a bit of Josh Brown about him, hasn't he, Brownie?
I wouldn't have thought so.
All right. So now you were going to bring us down a peg, big man. What was that all about?
And look, because...
And I'm glad that it's you that's going to do it.
Yeah, I know. I'm usually I'm obviously the optimist of the group, except for tipping. I was hoping to see a bit more from Tex than we saw. I think with the week off, I thought it'd freshen him up, but he just still looked fatigued, and he had a couple of good moments in the game. But apart from what I thought, for the most part, he looked just off the pace. And at what point do we get concerned? You know,
yeah.
It just. I love the bloke. I think he's a fantastic footballer, and he's not playing bad footy. But I'm just worried that at some point we have to, you know, if he doesn't lift his game a bit in the back half of the year, that we're going to have a discussion when it comes around finals time. Should we be there?
And it's the second game in a row where his disposal was, 75% of the time it was terrible, and even his decision making. That one where he kicked it forward to no one rather than just waiting a few minutes to spot someone up and missing targets. Yeah, I don't think he's looking sharp as he was earlier in the year.
Yeah, he only had the 9 possessions for the game, which is not a lot. And as you say, one of them, there was that ridiculous kick that he did up forward, which was always going to only go to the opposition or out of bounds. So, and certainly. I think if Tex was honest, he'd tell you that he had a bit of a shitter himself.
Yeah, he just wasn't getting separation much. It seemed like he was always side by side with his opponent, and he's never really been great in that regard unless he's got a real size advantage. So I don't know. I'm just seeing signs. I think we're all seeing signs that he's certainly coming towards the end, and hopefully he can pick it up because seasons ebb and flow. You can't play well every week. So, but it has been a bit of a drop off, hasn't it, since the first month of the season?
I think to play devil's advocate on that one, and this must be like opposite day or something. We didn't see Fogarty and Thilthorpe really do a huge amount inside the forward 50. Most of their work was a little bit higher up the ground, and a lot of our goal kicking work and that was at ground level with the smalls. Sydney's so short and fat, and I wouldn't have even played Tex this week. I wouldn't have gone with the 3 tools, but I reckon it'd be a hard game, a hard ground. But for that type of play to play, particularly when it's slippery, and yes, I agree with you, Brownie. He some of his disposal was pretty average, and he got a bit ahead of himself with that kick forward, etc., etc. And he's definitely looking for the bye. But I probably wouldn't write him off on that particular game. I think there's probably a few circumstances that maybe conspired against him, and I'd like to see him on a dry deck, which we may not get this Friday by all reports. But he takes a defender, and I guess, it means that Fogarty gets a third defender, and that helps out. Fogarty's been benefiting from that. So, I mean, if you want to play him as a decoy all year and have that set up, then I guess you just persevere with him until he can't walk.
Just on a different note, I'll totally altogether, Feen. Just in the ruck with O'Brien and Grundy, have you ever seen two blokes mauling each other? And, if you did what they were doing to each other anywhere else on the ground, it'd be a free kick automatically. But I thought they were just mauling each other and no free kicks paid to either party. Is that what we really want to see in the rucks?
No, I've thought for a while that, I know why so in the centre square they've got the line, and that was because they wanted blokes to run at each other, and rucks that can't jump are looking to take the space away from rucks that can. I honestly think that it's a very easy thing to sort out around the ground, at least, and that is to have a no touch rule. Do not make contact. If you make contact before the ball gets to the contest, it's an automatic free. Because some of the crap that comes out of throw-ins and ball-ups where it's pornographic, what they're doing to each other. Well, it's not, like you rightly say, Macca, it wouldn't be, no other player on the ground is allowed to do that. And the umpires just go both holding on, play on. It's like, well, that's a cop-out. And I think it takes away from the spectacle. And I'd much rather that you had some sort of no-contact rule. That'd be much better.
Yeah, at the moment, as I say, it's illogical compared to the frees played for very minute situations with other players. It's quite ridiculous, really.
Yeah, it just doesn't look good, does it? Like, you see blokes just grabbing onto each other and dry humping each other, and half the time the ball falls and hits one of them on the head instead of getting a tap because they're too preoccupied with filling each other up. And it's not football at all.
Well, the extreme one was, if you look back at the replay, you see Grundy actually, the ball's going up there. Grundy grabs hold of O'Brien, throws him to the ground, and then takes the ball. And I'm thinking, you can't do that at ruck, but apparently you can.
Well, it must be so difficult to adjudicate that the umpires just go, well, stuff it. They're both doing it, so let it go. But that's where I think
that's it.
That's where I think there needs to be some sort of no contact rule prior to the contest. I mean, they do it at the moment for a throw in. I think Brownie, you're not allowed, you have to be 1 metre aside when the ball gets thrown in, but then you can engage as soon as the ball's left the umpire's hand. Is that right?
Well, if that's the case, I don't think that was adjudicated on the weekend.
Yeah.
Because they were all over each other all the time. But you did notice with Philthorpe what he was doing at the boundary throw-ins. He was actually standing behind Grundy, and Grundy's waiting to get contact.
Yeah.
And Philthorpe refused to give him contact, and he'd wait till the ball was thrown in the air, and then he'd run around the front and try and get an advantage.
Yeah.
That's probably on the back of seeing what O'Brien was doing.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Yeah, Riley's not a bad ruck. He's not great at centre bounce, although his second efforts at centre bounce kind of make that irrelevant. But at stoppage bounces, he's pretty good. All right, any other bloody negatives from you, big man? Geez, you're a downer tonight.
Yeah, sorry, mate. I just look, it felt off, like something was wrong with tonight. Fan, you're too positive, mate. What's going on?
Well, no, but I just think credit where it's due, and I think I was extremely, like I said, it's one thing to win that game, but the way we went about it and how organised we were, and like everyone from the coaching staff to the players, everyone seemed to be working to the same hymn book. And it's probably the most cohesive I've ever seen it. So you got to be positive about that. Absolutely. But the only thing, I think we need to address the elephant in the room, and that is that Sydney was shit, absolute shit, and they had a few out, and we're very good at games where we've got the game on our terms. We're very good at that. because we've got a lot of talent. How much in the I'll answer my own question first and I'll throw it around. How much does it mean in the context of the season? I think what it does is give the boys a lot of confidence, and a feeling for what it's like to play a game like that. But in terms of the measuring stick, Brownie, I'm not so sure. What do you think?
I think we just wait and see what we serve up this week. If we can back it up again, I might be convinced. I still think it was a massive positive to really put a side away on the road, because that's something we haven't been good at doing.
Oh, definitely.
You're right. They're a rabble. They were fighting them up themselves on the field, and their communication wasn't great. They just didn't look good from the start. But you can only beat who you're playing, and the fact that we kept the pressure on right until the end of the fourth quarter was the most pleasing thing. We have been guilty before of getting to a really strong position and then just putting the cue in the rack and just sneaking home. We certainly didn't do that this time. So I'll just be guided by how we play. If we can put that kind of pressure into the game against Brisbane and get a good result, then I'll be pretty impressed.
Yeah, Mac.
Yeah, no, I got a lot out of the game, quite frankly, and I know that Sydney aren't the greatest travellers at the moment, but I combine that with our effort against Collingwood, who I think are obviously the premiership favourites at the moment, and comfortably in that situation. And we could have actually beat them if we'd done. We just kicked for goal normally, as we normally do, and I believe we could have beat them. If we didn't beat them, it would have been so close like a whisker. So, to me, I thought that game showed that we've got a pretty high ceiling, and I just thought this game showed that we continue that and we exercise that high ceiling and just crucified a team that's not travelling so well. But it shows that the game plan we've got will work as long as everybody buys into it. And
well, that's the first time you've said that. That's the first time you've said that ever, Macca. And I'm not pulling you up to be a dickhead about it, but what you're saying now is you feel like our game plan has evolved to something that resembles a finals winning setup. Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that. I think that the game plans we played before, like gun and run, we were playing early in the season. That was very good and nice to watch. But if the game you're playing a top team, it's not going to work. If you kick 100 and they kick 110, what we've done is we've actually sacrificed a little bit of that to make sure that there's a lot less on the other side of the ledger, and we've adjusted our game plan to do that. And I don't know whether it's Nick's thinking it or whether it's the guy above him thinking that.
Doesn't
but
really
somebody's
matter.
No, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, there is a distinct adjustment in our game plan, and it's a game plan which if we perform, we will always get a very good result, be it a win or a loss, but mainly a win.
Big man.
And because and they believe in it.
Mac is still going.
No, I was just going to say, and the good thing is the players appear to believe in it.
Big man.
Well, I can't judge people for cutting me off, mate, because I do that all the time. So, look, I think what I liked was just that we had a bit of swagger, I think. And that's sort of easy to do when you're 90 points up like we were, but I thought we brought it from the start, even when Sydney actually, if you rewatch the game, they were pretty invested for the first 10 minutes before we just blew them away.
Yeah.
But even in that first 10 minutes, I thought we just showed maturity and an aggression that I hadn't really seen from us a whole lot playing, particularly playing away. It's easy to do it in front of your home crowd, but to do it away against Sydney was really pleasing. And so even though we got to take in consideration that Sydney aren't the Sydney of the last few years, I still think the way in which we sort of held ourselves, and that's probably also helped by, the guys that we recruited like Neil Bullen and Cumming and Peatling, mature types, not just in terms of their footy ability, but also just off field and everything. I think those guys really help in those away trips to settle the boys and to get them fired up and mentally ready for a game. So I just really liked the way we came out to play and sort of felt like we owned that ground rather than playing. It almost felt like it was our home game, if that makes sense. The way we played. So that was really pleasing to see. It's funny because we haven't really talked about it, but you mentioned it before about the whole rabble thing. Just quickly, like, how do we feel about that comment and the fact that we actually apologised to Sydney today? I'm curious to see what you boys think about. Like, Brownie, what did you think of the comment and the apology?
Or it was just a throwaway line and pretty much what Dane Cox said in his presser. I didn't think there was any need to apologise for that, but it wasn't a personal comment against any one person. It was just basically saying they were a rabble on the field, and they were. Everyone knew it, so why apologise?
Yeah, I 100% agree with Brownie. 100%. It's a sort of a throwaway line, and they were. And as you said, their coach agreed, so I wouldn't have apologised.
Look, I think it was just more a product of Wayne maybe not articulating himself very well. I don't think there was any malice in it. I just think he probably just used the wrong words or whatever. But Tim Silvers needs to harden up, because stiff shit if Sydney were slighted by that. Who cares? I mean, we've been on the tail end of some pretty rough stuff for the last 6 or 7 years. We come out and we play a dominant, assertive game against a team that's had the wood on us for so long, and then we go ahead and apologise like limp dicks? Come on.
Yeah.
Maybe the back office now has to harden up now that the front office seems to have hardened up a bit.
I agree about the articulation thing. I wouldn't be surprised if he was trying to say they were more like they were rattled rather than rabble. Well, and even then, like if you listen to the recording, because it looks worse on paper. You actually listen to the recording. He was just said they were a bit of a rabble on the field. Like, he didn't say they're a rabble, they're an absolute rabble or whatever. Like, he just talked about how they were on the field. So it's just the word rabble, isn't it? That's the one that got people upset on Fox Footy and Jack Rewalt and stuff. And look, it's one of those things that the only thing I will say is that teams use anything they can use to fire themselves up. We know that with Port Adelaide, for instance. So I'm guessing it's just the club trying to protect us from next time we play Sydney. And
but I think it's actually counterproductive doing. I would have just let it go through the keeper. And I reckon what Wayne was trying to say was that because of the way we were playing, the Sydney side were becoming disorganised. If he'd have said disorganised instead of a bit of a rabble, I think it would have been fine, because that was self-evident. I think it was the actual word that he used that got bloody people's knickers in a knot. But that's what I mean by articulation. I think he was. I mean, you rarely hear Wayne in the media, so I mean, he's not an expert when it comes to that sort of stuff. I didn't like Tim Silvers coming out and doing that, and I was a bit surprised actually that they felt the need to do it. I think it was an overreaction.
Definitely.
Back onto the question that I asked you guys about where it sits, and Mako, I just want to talk really briefly about something that you said about game plan. I don't think we're anywhere ready yet to make a call on game plan. I think, as I mentioned previously, I think the game plan that we brought to the Sydney match was excellent, and it was carried out really well. But we were allowed to play that game pretty much on our terms. Dean Cox did nothing at any stage to try and counter, and their players, their leaders, didn't do anything to try and counter. You wouldn't see Chris Scott or Craig McRae or Chris Fagan or Adam Kingsley, for that matter, or Hardwick let that go on for 4 quarters. You just wouldn't see it.
No, look, that's a very, very good point. And we're playing Brisbane this week. And I have no doubt we will come out with a very similar type of game plan and try to implement it. And as you say, you're paying much higher quality, and it's going to be a lot more difficult to implement it. And that's where you get the real acid test, is whether it's going to work in the finals or not. It looks on paper like it will, but then we're going to test it against somebody who is, well, a premier and a very, very good team. And this will be a bit of an acid test this week, whether this fine tuning they've done, whether it's going to be the trick or whether they need to do more fine tuning. But it worked well against Sydney, and but now Brisbane's got a lot of quality players, and they've also got a quality midfield. But in every line they've got good players. So this will be an acid test to see whether it does stand up against the very, very best.
All right, before we move on to talk about that upcoming game in more detail, just a reminder again to those in Discord, if you want to have your say, you got plenty of time in order to raise your hand and come on. And in the meantime, Macca, why don't we, while you're still awake, because you look like you're coming down now, mate, you're starting to...
Well, that's natural, I think.
What sort of liqueurs are you drinking? Bit of a slippery nipple?
No, Benedictine and
Sex on the
Grand
Beach?
Marnier.
Grand Marnier?
Whatever was there. No.
What's the cowboy one? I've forgotten about that one. Anyway.
Okay.
I was disappointed they didn't have Drambuie, mate. No Drambuie, which is my favourite.
Yeah.
I love it. Absolutely love it.
I didn't know they still made it.
Yeah, they do. I used to do.
Do you bootleg it, do you?
Well, I used to do people's tax return for bottles of Drambuie, mate.
Are you a registered tax agent?
No.
All right, before we get Macca arrested, let's get into the weekend's results, shall we? And
yeah.
Friday night we had an interesting game. Lions, for all their spot on the ladder, they're only just going at the moment. 13-12-90 to Essendon 11-6-72.
It's a very good point, mate, because they did struggle, and Essendon really aren't the greatest team, and but Martin and Corwell for the Dons, they played very well, and to get within 12 points at three-quarter time. The Dons got close, but in the end, Brisbane's just steady to win the game. I must mention a player that played for Essendon, Caddy. He's going to be a star. He did some amazing things during the game. But Brisbane virtually won that game in the first. They virtually won the game in the first quarter. They got the lead, and as we said, and that was it.
Yeah. Collingwood teaching Hawthorn a bit of a lesson, 16-11-107 to 8-8-56. A bit of a statement game for Collingwood, I reckon.
Absolutely. And they really told them what they thought of them. They almost doubled their score. And Nick Dacos, interesting fact here, Fee, he recorded his first contested mark in his career, AFL career.
Yeah.
Which is
one more than you now.
No, in my career, I took at least one, but not many more. But he's played 82 AFL games in his first. But they've got a good structure. They ended up forward. He's very clever. He got 5 goals, and they're evergreens inside, bottom, and crisp. They perform as they always do, and they've got their game plan. They play to it. They're hard to beat. I'm just going to mention though Sicily though. What the hell is going on with Sicily? He is looking like an absolute no-hoper at the moment.
I think he's almost a spent force.
Well, he is absolutely.
It's talk about someone dropping off a cliff. He's had a bigger form lapse than bloody Greg Chappell.
Yeah, I've never seen a form lapse like this. Like last year a star. This year he doesn't justify his place at the moment. I'll
tell you, and I don't want to dwell on these games, but I'll tell you who you missed who I reckon is absolutely fundamental to Collingwood winning a flag this year, and that's Jamie Elliott.
No, I didn't mention his 5 goals.
Oh, did you? Sorry, I was zoned out.
Yep.
But he really is key to them. When he's up and about, they are a different beast altogether.
He's clever. He's always in the right spot. He just
fantastic.
Reads it beautifully.
Fantastic footballer. Yep. The Suns going down surprisingly to the Dockers, 9-10-64 to 11-9-75. That's the Suns of old, Macca.
Well, it was wet conditions, and if we look back at the Gold Coast record, they don't really like it when it's really, and it was fairly wet. So they don't seem to like it when it's like that. And Freo were definitely much more polished than the home team. Sarong and Brayshaw gave them a ton of drive, and Jackson is really starting to bloom. He spent a lot of time in the forward pocket. When Darcy doing the ruck, and Darcy played, but Jackson got a lot more time, and he was very, very good. And
that they can't afford. Suns can't afford to drop home games. They can't afford to. They will look vulnerable very quickly. We'll look at the ladder in a minute. That it won't take much for them to be in a real dogfight with Western Bulldogs and Freo and Essendon for that last spot if they're not careful.
Yeah, well, I'd written Freo off, but they've won 3 in a row now.
Yeah. The Giants, a classic comeback after Callum Ward's knee injury there, which was such a sad way for him to potentially end his career. 12-8-80, getting up over Richmond 10-17-77. Giants, very hard team to read at the moment.
Well, they were pretty poor, really, for 3 quarters. And I'm taking a bit of credit away from Richmond. Actually, Richmond's old hands, Hopper, Taranto, Presti, they all fired for a change in midfield, and that's where they were getting all their drive. And
best game
and
Hopper's played for ages.
I reckon it's the first decent game he's played all year.
Probably.
28 points up at 3/4 time, and as you said, he came over. He was injured. He done his ACL, but he's, that's all team. He talked to the team, and the team got up for him, and they got up in the last 2 minutes. They kicked 5-2 to 1 point in that last quarter, which they were travelling poorly before that, but they responded and very narrow escape.
Yeah. And then only a couple of games today. The Saints, I don't know where to place them. 14-7-91 beat a very wayward Melbourne 7-21-63, a margin in the end of 28 points, but 21 scoring shots to 28. Probably Melbourne kicked themselves. I didn't watch the game, but Melbourne kicked themselves out of that by the looks of it.
Well, the D's came in with 5 wins from their last 6 games. Saints come in with 3 straight losses. But when will Melbourne learn? This is the third. They say they sell games, the home game to Alice Springs. That's 3 years in a row they've done it, and they've lost again. And MCG, they'd play it there, they would have won the game. But no, they've gone up to Alice Springs, everything's all disorganised, it's not routine, etc. And they've gone down to the Saints. And I must mention that the guy I really want us to get is played a phenomenal game again, Wanganeen Miller. He is outstanding, and I'd love to get him beat. I think we've got to do everything possible to get him.
Yeah, I don't know how we do it. I know from people that have told me that we're not going to die wondering, but I'm not sure how we get it done, particularly if Port end up doing a deal with Butters. But
yeah, that's why I hope Butters stays there. If Butters stays there, they haven't got the capital to do it.
No, they don't. But if he doesn't, then they do. And the last game that finished at a ridiculous hour, it was close until it wasn't. The Eagles were a goal down at the beginning of the last quarter, end up going down by 7. Eagles 11-7-73 to Geelong 17-14, 1-1-6.
Yeah, I really didn't pay much attention to this game.
No, of course
I was not. I was scoffing some food down before the show. So
trying to sober up.
Something like that. Yeah. I don't even know the result, but I'm sure that.
It only finished about
the
15 minutes ago. The Cats ended up winning after it was fairly close for a while. All right.
Yep.
Okay. Let's talk about next week's game then. Friday night, Brisbane, under lights and national audience, and another big test against a side
Huge.
that, as I mentioned, are only just going. But I reckon they will really want to put us back in our place, similar to how Collingwood put Hawthorn back in their place this weekend.
Go.
And I worry how we match up with them in their forward half now that they've got a couple of their small forwards back in some sort of form.
Well, hard to match up with because of quality. They're a quality team. There's no doubt about that. They're not travelling probably at their very, very best, but no, the way I see it is that I'm sure we'll come out with the same type of game plan. We'll come up with the same result. Whether that's good enough to beat this team, well, we'll find out. I was confident we would do Sydney in, and I'm 50-50 in this one. I don't have an opinion at this stage. What about you, big man?
Well, I tipped Sydney last week, so I don't trust myself anymore. It's an interesting one. Brownie said we match up pretty well against Brisbane, and it's weird because we drew them last year. Pretty sure we beat them the year before. Is that right?
We did. Yeah, we did.
Yeah. So obviously there's something there. They seem to be a team that lives for the big games and sort of just drifts through the games against the lesser teams. And unfortunately for them against Melbourne, it actually cost them a win because they just let that game go. But yeah, I think knowing that we're actually a half decent team this year, they're going to turn up and be pretty raring to go. You mentioned before, Finn, earlier about those stats in the midfield and clearances and all that, and that's curious because it's almost a bit of a different model. We can't match them for talent in the midfield. They bat very deep. If we can restrict Lachie Hill for once, that'd be nice. He's got a great record against us, and obviously they got other guys like McCluggage is in fantastic form. Ashcroft's going really well. So, it's not just them. You mentioned their forwards. Cameron, Loman's back in some decent form now.
Archie.
And Harris
up all the time.
Yeah, he's become a really solid player, isn't he? So, it'd be nice if we didn't let Jack Payne and Harris Andrews take 15 intercept marks between them. That's been a bit of a bugbear in the last few years. Hopefully now that Thilthorpe's in better form, that won't happen as much. It's going to be really interesting to see because it's going to be wet from as far as where, things can change, but it looks like it's going to be pretty wet. So that probably negates our forwards a little bit and obviously should suit their smalls, but maybe it's not the worst thing for it to be a bit wet for us because, they're a pretty classy unit and, they might take the edge of guys like Neil and McCluggage in terms of their ball use. I'd be curious to see how we match up, Fiend. And also, I don't know if we're just going to discuss this, but do we make changes to the team? We've got Laird there, and I think it's pretty. As much as Smithy had a good game, I think Laird's going to be in the team, even if we don't want him to. So, how do we get him in the team?
Like I said earlier in the thing, I don't know whether there's a matchup for Smith against Brisbane. You look at their forwards. They've got Archie, they've got Rayner, they've got Loman, they've got Cameron, and then they've got the two tools. Plus they got Zach Bailey who sneaks down there. Will Ashcroft will sneak down there a little bit. I don't know whether I did like Brodie Smith's rebound off halfback. And it's not as if Laird's a tight, small defender. But I don't know. Personally, I'd have neither of them. I'd have bloody Hugh Bond, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
Brownie?
Yeah, I think you're right. Laird they've called it that he's been rested, so he'll come back in. But whilst Brodie Smith probably hasn't got the pace to match it with their small forwards, I don't think Rory Laird has either. So I'm a bit with you. It's going to be an uncomfortable matchup, whoever it gets. And I think that's where we could be exposed a bit, I think. Yeah, it's going to be, and even in the forward line, if it's going to be wet, do you play 3 tools? Or do you give Walker a rest? But they're going to be reluctant to rest Walker because he needs to play every game to play his 300th, or if they rest him, we've got to bank on playing finals. So
yeah,
I think they're going to be conscious of that in their selection.
Well, Nick said it the other day that it was spoken about, so it will continue to be spoken about. Am I right in remembering that Jack Payne did an absolute number on Tex last time we played them?
He did. You're right. Dead right. Payne had a ripper game against us last time.
Yeah. So that'd be the matchup again. You obviously RT will be on Andrews. Remains to be seen then who takes Fogarty and how we play that. But I mean they've just got a lot of quality, and I would be bringing Hugh Bond in as a small lockdown defender, and whoever's getting off the chain, whether it be Cameron or whether it be Archie or even Zach Bailey, if he sneaks forward for a while, that's where I'd be sending Huey Bond. And if you're talking about an outlet defender between Smith and Laird, I'd probably keep Smith in the side on that basis. And I'd probably drop Sid Draper, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was going to say, there is an outlet there to bring Bond in, even if, just leaving the Laird situation and the Smith situation, leaving that aside. I think Draper, I would definitely put him back to the twos. Bond, this would be a great game to bring Bond in, because there will always be somebody getting off the chain with Brisbane. So it's not like he won't get a job to do.
I think it's I'd imagine, we don't know for sure because there could be injuries during the week, but I had to guess. I think it's Draper out, Laird in, and Smith becomes the sub potentially.
Yeah,
that's not right.
Yeah, no, it's not. But we don't tend to, we don't tend to base our team around things like that, do we? Like we played Tex in the wet against Collingwood a couple of weeks ago. I just suspect that that's probably how we'll look. We'll Sid's out first, and then Smithy or Pedler to the sub, I guess. But I think Pedler would actually be ideal in those conditions.
Yeah.
I don't think he's done a lot wrong, Ped, since he's been back. Didn't get the opportunities so much this week that he had the previous week, but geez, he hits that ball hard and created a few things out of nothing.
Did you see that one? He went through he just barreled through 3 Sydney players in the guts.
Yeah,
it was probably a free kick to Sydney, but it was great to see.
He's just Gary McIntosh reincarnated, in my opinion. All of that, and I think he's another one that would just benefit from a run of games, and I hope that they persevere with him. I really would like to see Huey Bond's been mentioned a couple of times in dispatches the last couple of weeks, so he's obviously on their mind. I think he's a better matchup than either Smith or Laird. I reckon Draper probably comes out because he could do with a run. I just don't think Brodie Smith is a sub. I think you either play him on the ground or you don't play him at all, mate.
Totally agree, 100%. But I think that because Laird was in the side and they rested him, I think they will automatically do the irrespective of any form. They'll just bring Laird straight back in, and I see Smith going out. That leaves the sub situation vacant. I hope they're not tempted to put Smith there, because that's not the right call. You need as I said, I'd like to see Bond play, whether it be as a sub or whatever. But because if things got desperate, you could always call him up on if he's a sub. But I wouldn't mind even seeing him put a start on the ground. But that might mean that somebody like Pedler might have to be out of the side. I don't know. You'd have to do a bit of a reshuffle, and I don't think they want to really do a major reshuffle. So that's probably the only thing against Bond playing.
Yeah, you'd like the SANFL fixture to be a little bit more bloody helpful as well. The amount of frickin' buys and stuff like that, the state games and all that sort of crap that we've got to put up with. The sooner they get an AFL reserves up and running, the better, in my opinion.
I reckon we've had more buys than we've played SNFL games.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it feels like it. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. What's our thoughts going around the room, Brownie? This is game 2 of our little 3-game test. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we should get it done. I'd be pretty disappointed after that, all-round solid team effort this week. I'd be pretty disappointed if we can't back it up with another solid effort. And being at home, I think, we should get it done. I'd expect us to win by 3 or 4 goals.
Okay.
Oh, look, I am dubious. It's going to be tough, but I'll go for Adelaide by 7 points in a thriller.
Big man.
Yeah, I can't see it not being a close game, regardless of who wins. Gee whiz, this is a tough one. I'm going to go the Lions but I really would like to see us win because I think Hawks and Tassie is going to be a pretty tough gig. So if we can get this win, that's. I mean, we made a statement against Sydney, but this is a whole new kettle of fish. So, I think Brisbane are just a class above, unfortunately. But so I'll tip them. But gee, I'd really hope we win because I think we're a decent chance for sure.
Yeah. I think that in terms of attitude and application, we've set a standard for ourselves now, irrespective of game plans and personnel and all the rest of it. I think anything less than that commitment and that mindset that they brought out on Sydney will show us that they're not quite as switched on. So I think we can count on them bringing intensity. I don't agree that I think there's areas of the game that we don't necessarily match up on them terribly well. I worry about their forward line. Their smalls always seem to bloody get going. And Zorko, if someone can punch him out in the first 5 minutes, that'd be great. Macca, if you could just sneak onto the park and give him a left hook, that'd be fantastic. I can't stand that little bugger.
Well, if it was on the ground, I would do it. No problem there.
That. But I don't know. I'm not basing it on anything. There seems to be a little bit of a subtle shift in mindset, behaviour, rhetoric, whatever, coming out of the club. But as I said, I think Brisbane will really want to win this one just to put us back in our box. I can't. I'm going to say us by a goal.
I'll also add, Fiend, that this shouldn't matter too much, but we've seen with the Geelong game it did. We're actually coming off consecutive 6-day breaks for this game, whereas Brisbane are coming off an 8-day break. Don't know how much influence that has. It's not as bad as a 5-day one, but I just wonder if that adds up a bit heading, this time of year particularly. But I mean, it's not a cop out, but just thought I'd bring that up.
We haven't had 2 taxing games. West Coast wasn't taxing. Sydney, it was a little bit heavy and slivery, but it wasn't as if it wasn't a Gold Coast.
Yeah,
I just don't think we can accept those sorts of excuses. That like I said, they've set a standard for intensity and work ethic and pressure and all that sort of stuff. And whilst you can't sustain that for every minute of every game, it's certainly the mindset that they should be bringing to the table, at least at the beginning of the game, until it settles. So, we'll see, I guess. Interesting. Everyone has been quite silent on the Discord audience. I think they're shell-shocked, Macca. Shell-shocked at the positivity coming out of this podcast tonight.
We've floored them, mate. We've absolutely floored them. I don't think we've said a negative, have we?
Oh, Big Man did, but he's always like that.
Oh, no, but that wasn't so much
YouTube comments.
No, that wasn't so much negative. That was more like doubting Thomas comments.
I'm supposed to be a Nick sounding board, Fiend. I'm a club shirt, apparently.
So some of the YouTube comments have been hilarious, I've got to say. Oh dear. No, look, thanks to everyone for joining us this evening. It's look, you know, we've had a long drought, and it looks like there's a little bit of light coming over the horizon, which would be fantastic because it's been a long road for a lot of supporters. And credit where it's due. We asked, you know, at the beginning of the year, I asked the question, is Nick's the next Messiah? And it'll be a fair freaking effort if he gets us into a winning position. There'll be so much humble pie that I will have to eat, and you, Mac, probably more you, because you said we'd never win a flag under Nixie.
I did say that.
Yeah. And
Well,
we've got a long way to go, let's be honest. But I don't know. It was a very, very, very positive win against Sydney, Brownie, wasn't it? And I don't know, we might all be brought back to earth in 6 days' time.
Yeah, I'd be saying to anyone on YouTube, the chances of you being this positive next week are not that high.
Come on, mate. If we win, I'll be positive.
Oh, if we win, yeah, but there'll still be some negatives. We're not going to win by 90, are we?
No, but I think any win against the top 2 teams is a good win, and I think any time you can beat Collingwood, Brisbane, or Geelong in the current state of play, I think is a pretty good effort. So I'd expect a scrappy, bloody umpire assisted, too many players on the ground win at the moment. You know, just to get over the line. So we'll see. Look, thanks everyone for joining us. It's been a really good night. Don't forget, if you are on YouTube and you haven't yet, you can like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the content. And if you haven't got around a Discord server yet, please do so. There will be links in all the descriptions, and we have good chats during the week and lively game day chats as well. So it's a good community to be around. Gentlemen, Macca, I will let you go and sleep it off. How long does it take you to bounce back these days? Are you going to be up by about Wednesday, you reckon?
No, I'll be up to about 2 o'clock tonight.
2 o'clock tonight?
Sure.
You're going back?
I don't normally go to bed till about 2.
Right. Well, we got a Grand Prix to watch shortly, so.
Yeah, but go to bed about 2, get up about 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Yeah, there you go. Well, thanks for that insight. Brownie, thank you once again, sir.
Thanks, mate. Speak next week.
We will be in cohorts again next week. Big man, pleasure as always.
Thanks, Fane. I've enjoyed the positive vibes tonight.
Oh, it's been great. I need to go and have a lie down, I think. All right, so everyone have a good week. Stay safe. We will be in Discord again on Friday night for the big game versus Brisbane, and again back here on Sunday for another weekend wrap. Until then, we'll see you later on.
Yep, good night all.
See you guys.
Good night.